Hello to those of you joining us now. Welcome to today's Death in Custody Reporting Act, otherwise known as DCRA, Data Transparency and Accessibility State Level Data Training. We will be starting in a couple of minutes, so thank you for joining us. Get settled in. Going to give about 30 more seconds just as other attendees are joining us, but thank you to those who are already here. Okay. We are going to get things started. Once again, thank you for joining us today here at the Death in Custody Reporting Act, otherwise known as the DCRA Data Transparency and Accessibility State Level Data Training. My name is Gabriela Castellanos, and I am the TTA Specialist on the BJA Planning, Performance, and Impact team. We are so happy that you have joined us today, and we are excited to present this information. For technical issues, please contact my colleague, Angela Beebe. You can send a private message to her via the chat. You can also send a message to all panelists, or you can send an email to Angela at angela.beebe@usdoj.gov. For your awareness, this session is being recorded and will be posted on the BJA YouTube and BJA multimedia pages. We encourage you to ask questions as they arise throughout this presentation, but we also have a reserved time at the end of the session, so please use the Q&A function at the bottom right hand of the screen. This is different from the chat. This is exclusively for questions pertaining to the content in this training, and it is in the bottom right hand of the screen. For more complex questions or those that require additional explanation, we will address during the end of the Q&A portion, or we can follow up with you via email. Like I mentioned before, the chat box will be used by panelists to share links and resources with participants or to solve any technical issues that you may have. It will not be pertaining to questions that you have relating to the content in this training. But with those housekeeping announcements out of the way, I will now hand it over to Deputy Director for Programs, Michelle Garcia, to begin the session. Go ahead, Michelle.
Thank you so much, Gabriela. Hello, welcome everyone, and Happy New Year. We're thrilled that you're able to join us for this presentation on the Death in Custody Reporting Act, or DCRA state data. Next slide, please. During our time together, we'll provide a little bit of a background around DCRA and how it is seated in BJA. We'll also go over our release of data plan and timeline, and then we'll spend the bulk of our time actually walking through the data tables and demonstrating how you can access various elements of the data. During that time, you'll also hear from our DCRA TTA providers from the Justice Information Resource Network on preparing for and responding to questions you might receive regarding your state data, as well as highlighting a current mini grant opportunity that is available to support you in DCRA data collection and reporting. Finally, as Gabriela mentioned, we've left ample time for any questions that you might have for us. Before we dive into the content, I'd like to welcome the Bureau of Justice's Assistant Director, Carlton Moore, to provide some welcoming remarks. Carlton?
All right. Well, thank you, Michelle. And I want to thank all of you for joining us here today. I don't know how many of you thought that you would participate in so many webinars and meetings about DCRA, but it says a lot about you as a professional, that you have not only been willing to do this, but that you've done a really good job in getting information to us. I really want to start by thanking our incredible team. You're going to hear from Jimmy and from Michelle, but they have done an incredible job. And I'm just going to say that I'm having a little bit of internet problems, so I might disappear, but you can still hear me. Because when there was all of the problems with the weather on Sunday in many places across the country, I was able to fly to DC because I had important in-person meetings that I need to have Monday and Tuesday and tomorrow. And of course, the federal government has been closed. So I've been in my hotel room for 2 days, so it was really important that I get to DC. But that's the reason why I might disappear a little bit. But I just wanted to thank our team at BJA and some of our other partners who have done such a great job. Phelan has been a tremendous partner in this. I think I saw Teresa is on, and of course, our other partners from NCJA to Journ and others who have just done such a great job working with us to try to get us to the point where we are now. I knew when I got to BJA that I would spend time on the Deaths in Custody Reporting Act. I did not anticipate the amount of time that I would spend on it, but I'm really glad that I did. For one, it gave me an opportunity to work with SAA offices, and as a longtime SAA, that is certainly one of my favorite things about this job is being able to work with SAA offices. The other thing, though, is that I think we've been able to really change the conversation around DCRA from this bureaucratic thing that we have to do to a responsibility that we all have to try to help save lives. And no matter what aspect of this that you're involved in, the reality is that DCRA was created to save lives, and it was to try to understand what is causing people to die in custody, right? So whether they're in jails or prisons or in the process of arrest, trying to figure out what we can do and learn from incidents that have happened around the country, and then to take that learning and put it into place so that we can save lives. And this is tough. It is tough work. And you all know how tough this is. Sometimes I have an opportunity to talk to people, and look, everyone who's involved in this is really focused on, they want to save lives. Everyone wants to save lives. And that is the common thing that we have. I think sometimes, depending on where you sit, it looks very different to you. And this is hard. It's really hard. You know, I was an SAA. It was challenging to try to get information from some places. And I know that many of you are dealing with challenges that are both that we all deal with and sometimes incredibly unique to your particular situation. So I want to really thank you for all the work that you've done to get us to the point where we are today, because we are much, much better off in terms of implementing not just the letter of the law, but the spirit of DCRA. And I think we've done a really good job at that, and we could not do that without your support and your partnership. Obviously, this was all about getting data. And so now we're finally to the point where we have released some national aggregate data, and we've released state level data. You're going to have an opportunity to hear a little bit more about that and to ask questions. Certainly, if you have questions, I would urge you to ask those questions. Don't ask me unless they're easy questions, but ask Michelle and Jimmy. They especially love answering very, very difficult and challenging questions. So make sure that they have a good time while they're on. So I'm going to turn it back over to Michelle, but let me just say, I want to thank you all, not just for the work that you've done on DCRA, but really for all the work that we have asked of the SAA offices around the country over the course of these last 3 years for me. As you all know, I will be departing BJA on the 20th of January. And it has been a tremendous, tremendous pleasure for me to be part of this organization, to work with the incredible team I have the opportunity to lead, and to work with so many of you across the country. This is incredibly important work, and I know that you all are up for it. And so I thank you so much for your commitment to this work, to your professionalism, and for the way that you have treated me and our team here at BJA. And I'm leaving BJA, but I'll still be around. I don't want you to think it's anything too serious. I'll be leaving BJA, I'll still be around, and hopefully I'll have the chance to interact with some of you at a later date. Well, with that, I will turn things back over to Michelle.
Thank you so much, Carlton. And I want to thank you for your leadership and really moving the needle on the DCRA work within BJA and OJP. We know this has been a priority for you, and we know that particularly your background as an SAA brought just a wealth of perspective into what the states have been facing with this responsibility. So thank you so much for your leadership.
Thanks, Michelle.
Next slide, please. So I imagine you are all pretty familiar with the Bureau of Justice Assistance at this point. As you know, we were created in 1984 to reduce violent crime, create safer communities, and reform our nation's criminal justice system. We just celebrated our 40th anniversary. And in FY20, BJA assumed the responsibility for collecting DCRA data from states. It had previously lived with the Bureau of Justice Statistics. Over the past 4 years, BJA and JERN and all of you have worked to enhance the completeness and accuracy of the data that you have been collecting and reporting to us, which has led us to this point where we are able to release aggregate national and state data. Next slide, please. So why has the DCRA data been released? The data release demonstrates the substantial progress made by BJA and the states to advance the data collection program, which was paused over concerns of missing data in 2014. The aggregate data offers a national overview of deaths in custody, providing the public and policymakers with valuable information about the scope and nature of these occurrences all across the country. And the state data offers more localized insights, allowing for analysis at the state level and enabling states to better understand your own data compared to the national trends. We see this release of the data as an opportunity to demonstrate a commitment to transparency and accountability in the management of our justice systems. And by making this data available, we can work collectively to proactively engage with the public, local stakeholders, and policymakers about steps being taken to improve safety and reduce deaths in custody. Because as Carlton said, this is ultimately about saving lives. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Jimmy, who is going to engage with you to find out how, if and how you are already using any of our data. Jimmy?
Thank you, Michelle. And thank you, Director Moore. Your leadership on DCRA has, among many other things, is greatly appreciated. And Michelle, thank you for kicking us off. And your leadership on both JAG and DCRA has been unmatched. So as Michelle and Carlton have already said, and as we indicated in the last training we conducted in September, our main interest in publishing the data is for transparency. We have made great strides in improving the DCRA data that is reported, but we still have much room for improvement. We all have gotten to a place that we feel comfortable making this information at the state level public with the appropriate protections and understandings. Next slide, please. Before we go further, we would like to know if any of you have already looked at, viewed, or used the DCRA data tables that have been published on the DCRA website. We will put the poll question up and give you a minute to respond. I will note that when this first launched, the DCRA data page was among the most visited on the BJA site. And I just got off a phone call before this training with the state, and they said that they were able to respond to a data request among some of their folks in their state that they were able to use the website for, and was able to fill that data request. So In that instance, it was very helpful. So it looks like about 50-50 split, not quite 50-50 split. So we'll let it go another second or so. All right, we got about a third that said yes, another third that said no, and then the majority that did not answer the question, and that's okay. But I would encourage you all to take some time, go to the website, review it, look at your state, look at national data, see how you can use it best in your state. Next slide, please. Now let's revisit the data release plan. When we last did our webinar, we released the aggregate national data in the form of 3 separate interactive tables. Since that time, we have been working on developing additional views that display aggregate state level data. These new views were published in December. Now that the data tables are live, we are moving toward the maintenance phase. This timeline has been revised since last time we met, as we have refined our data release plan. This includes releasing new fiscal years of data on an annual basis, as well as updating previously submitted data in previous fiscal years. The first annual release and data refresh will take place by the end of June 2025, where we will release FY 2024 data, as well as refreshing prior fiscal year's data. The next refresh will take place 6 months later, or the December/January time period. FY 2025 data will be released by June 2026, and so on and so forth. Just a reminder that if you have any questions about this, please put them in the Q&A chat and we will address them at the end. Next slide, please. Now let's take a look at the data tables. As mentioned before, we have added 2 new views on the BGA DCRA website. The first 3 figures, death by location type, manner of death, and the demographics dashboard remain. They were released in October. However, a new state filter has been added to each of these first 3 figures. Figures 4 and 5 are new. They are decedents by state, a large table, and then a state map view. We will demonstrate those in the next few slides. Next slide, please. As you can see here, a new state filter has been added to the deaths by location type table. This same filter repeats across the manner of death table, as well as the demographics dashboard. As mentioned during the last time we met, values of 5 or less have been hidden. BGA is not representing these data as complete or as official government statistics. We did clean a small number of records. For example, arrest-related deaths reported to us as executions. Finally, as with the first release, users will not be able to export the data tables or source data. Now, if you will give us a second to get the videos ready to play, we will demonstrate each of these tables, including the new state table and the map view. So as you can see in this first table, you can use the new state filter to select each individual state or territory. The manner of death filter remains the same. As is demonstrated in this short video, small numbers or cell numbers less than 5 will be masked when manner of death selections are selected. All right, next video. Again, you can select the location type of interest or select multiple types at once. As you can see in this video, NR on the data table indicates no reported value, or in other words, a decedent has not been reported that falls under the selected criteria. You can select multiple states or one state, any states that you are interested in viewing, and the table will interactively change the values. Next video, please. The state selection has also been added for the demographics dashboard as well. You will note that location type is a filter for this set of tables. However, manner of death is not. All the same masking rules and notes already mentioned still apply. In this video, the new state table, total decedents by state and fiscal year, is viewable, and it was added in December. In this view, you can manipulate the table by manner of death and location type. In the notes section of the website, we strongly discourage users from comparing numbers across states. BJA cautions that these numbers are influenced by a variety of factors, including total number of actual reported incidents, participating state and local agencies, state laws, and state and local procedures related to the DCRA death data collection and reporting. Next video, please. Finally, we have the state map view that was also added in December. To see counts for each state, you can hover with the cursor. By default, all fiscal year data 2020 through 2023 is selected. However, to view one or more fiscal years, you can filter to your interest. We also have included manner of death and location types as additional filters. So with that, give us a second to get back to the slide presentation. And looks like we're back to the slide presentation. So let me introduce you to the next speaker. Most of you should be familiar with Alexa Singer at this point. She leads the DCRA TTA Center efforts at JERN. So thank you, Alexa, and I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Jimmy. Like Jimmy said, my name is Alexa Singer, for those of you that I haven't had a chance to meet yet, and I know that I've emailed many of you. So I lead JERN's DCRA TTA Center, and I'm going to talk through something that we anticipate might happen and how you can handle that. So we are anticipating that with this data release, you will receive a lot of questions or have significant interest from the media or the public or advocacy groups who hope to understand the importance of the data. Some of these people might reach out to you and ask more detailed questions. You might not receive questions at all, but in case you do, it's helpful to be prepared for that. So to effectively navigate these conversations, it's important to prepare for a range of questions. You might get general questions about the data's implications, or you might get more detailed questions about some of your state's policies and procedures or data collection methods. So to help with this, JERN has developed a resource on responding to the public and media inquiries. Our guide offers strategies for engaging with these types of questions, as well as key messaging points that you can use to ensure that you are accurately and effectively communicating this information in case you do get any questions about it. So the link to the resource is on the slide, which I believe the slides will be sent out. It also might have just been put in the chat. But if you can't get access to this link right now, it is on our website. So if you go to the JERN DCRA TTA Center webpage, you can find the link to our resource on there. We can go to the next slide. So these questions here are potential questions that you'll want to consider now that the state level data is publicly available. And these are the questions that we elaborate on in the guide that was linked on the previous slide. The questions that might come up, or the questions that we're anticipating you might receive, fall into 4 broad categories. So the first type of question is just general questions about the data, including trends in the data, comparing the data to either national trends or comparing deaths across states. For these types of questions, we recommend emphasizing that it's not always accurate to compare data across states. Data collection policies and procedures vary widely from state to state, and as you all are the ones collecting the data, you know as well as anybody else some of the difficulties with getting accurate and complete data. So cautioning people against those types of comparisons is the route that we would recommend taking to answer these types of questions. You might also be asked about different types of deaths, so law enforcement-based deaths, jail-based deaths, prison-based deaths, and how those might vary in your state. As long as you're being asked about your specific state, you should have enough information to be able to speak to some of those variations. Another type of question that we anticipate are questions about accountability and policy. So you might be asked about any systems or policies or practices that your state has in place. And these are a good opportunity for you to emphasize what your state is doing. Or if your state is developing any policies, or this is something that you have not quite gotten to yet, you might be able to direct them to the proper agency within your state to answer these questions. So there are a variety of ways to answer those types of questions. It's going to be really dependent on what's happening in your state. The third category of questions would be a question or two about specific trends or concerns. So this might have to do with manner of death and which manner of death is most prevalent in your state, or which manner of death is most prevalent within a specific type of facility. You don't need to necessarily speculate on why there are differences across facilities or across manners of death. But if you are aware of something that is going on in your state that might be impacting this, that would be helpful to share if these types of questions come up. Finally, and probably the most prevalent type of question would be questions about data limitations. And these you would be really well versed in the data collection side of things and most likely know how to answer these. So these questions would include inquiries about whether the data reflect all deaths in custody, or if it's possible that some cases have been missed, as well as questions about how often the data will be updated and made public, which Jimmy just discussed a few minutes ago. So with these types of questions, it might be helpful to refer the individual to your state's DCRA implementation plan, or to discuss any of your state's policies and procedures as far as DCRA data reporting goes, just to be transparent about the process and help the public or the media understand sort of where these numbers are coming from. As I mentioned, the Journ resource has sample answers to many of these potential questions, and you are more than welcome to borrow this language to help build out your questions, or build out answers to these questions if you receive any. And then if we go to the next slide, I'll talk now just some general tips and best practices for responding to inquiries. Some of this is a little bit obvious, so I don't mean to teach you things that you definitely already know. But the first most important thing would be to follow your agency's policies and procedures for answering these types of inquiries. If your agency has a particular way of handling media inquiries, definitely first and foremost, follow that. But then in general, it would be important to respond to the requests and not ignore them. Aiming to respond promptly can also buy you more time if you do need to go look up information, or if you're not totally sure about the answer to something. Even just a response of "Thanks for your question, we'll get back to you," can be helpful in delaying some of these inquiries that you're getting. You'll want to be transparent by only sharing what you know for sure. And if you don't know something, or you're not sure of the answer, offer to follow up, or you can say that you don't know, and you can share instead something that you do know. Even if you don't have the exact answer that the individual is looking for, you can always just explain the importance of the DCRA data and the reason that the state level data has been released. So you'll want to show proactivity and highlights your state's successes. Especially in those cases where the answer might not be what the person wants to hear. You'll want to highlight the efforts that your state is making to address missing and incomplete data, and be sure that you discuss any positive trends or successful initiatives that have sort of come out of this reporting. And if your state is not at the point where things are being implemented, you can always talk about how you're constantly making improvements to your data collection processes. Finally, you'll want to make sure that you communicate with all of the appropriate agencies and individuals who are involved with DCRA data collection, because depending on whose email address is out there, that might be who the media or general public contact. So you just want to make sure that anyone who might get asked a question knows that this data is available and that there is some sort of plan in place for how these types of questions will be answered. If you run into any difficult questions, or if you want to workshop any potential answers to questions, you can always reach out to Jern's DCRA TTA Center, and we would be happy to help brainstorm some of those things for you. So now I will pass this over to my colleague, Doug Spence, who will talk about the mini grant program that Jern is now offering to help improve DCRA data reporting.
Thank you, Alexa. Hi, everyone. My name is Doug Spence. I'm a research fellow at Jern, leading the mini grant program, which I want to take a few minutes to talk a bit about. Hopefully you've seen the email announcements that are going out about this, but in case you haven't, what we have here on this slide is just an overview of the funding opportunity as a whole. So what you can see is we're anticipating providing between 10 to 15 awards, each up to $50,000 each, to provide funding to improve DCRA reporting in 4 general focus areas. So that could be purchasing resources or tools to support DCRA data collection and data quality, supporting events or trainings, dissemination efforts, or hiring consultants or support staff that might help those efforts. We'll talk a bit more about some specific examples of types of things that might be funded by these mini grants in just a moment, but just suffice to say here that you can apply for things in these categories and you're not limited to any one. So if you have ideas for things that could help that might be in multiple categories, that's totally okay. Some other things to be aware of in terms of key dates. The application deadline for this opportunity is the end of this month, so January 31st. So coming up fairly soon. We'll talk a bit in a moment about how to apply, but it's through an online application form. The project period would be between March and December of 2025. So that's when the activities funded by this effort would have to occur. And then eligible applicants include state administering agencies for DCRA, and then also statistical analysis centers, provided that you have a partnership agreement with the state administering agency or involved in that. So hopefully that gives everybody a good overview of the opportunity. And if we go to the next slide, please. We've got some more specific examples of ways in which this funding could be used. Things like creating a website to share the results of DCRA data collection, or to better communicate for dissemination efforts, creating new data collection forms and systems, supporting trainings and conference attendances, purchasing subscriptions for news services to get information about events that may happen that you otherwise wouldn't be able to know about, purchasing new software. All these sorts of things are examples of the types of uses that we're hoping to see this money go to. But I do want to say, if you have thoughts and you're not quite sure whether it would be relevant for this program, or if you have any questions about how the funding might potentially be used, just let us know. Feel free to reach out to us and provide the contact information here in just a second. But with any questions that you may have about the program or about the potential uses for the funding. Next slide. Okay, so in terms of how you would apply for this, the process is fairly straightforward. You'd be using the online application form, which you can find a link to there, which is basically a survey. It's been designed to really make the application process as straightforward and streamlined as possible. So anticipating it shouldn't take anyone too terribly long to put together the application. But we'd encourage you to go visit that, take a look at the questions, get a sense for what information you're going to need, and then come back and submit it all in one session. On that application form, you'll also see a template for the budget for the project. We do ask that a budget be included with the proposal submission. So you'll see a template for how to structure that as part of that as well. And in terms of the evaluation criteria for the proposals, primarily looking at the impact on DCRA reporting and data quality. So obviously, things that, projects and activities that are really going to have the biggest impact there are going to be scored the most highly. But we are also interested in projects that promote collaboration and cross-learning, and that can be across states. So if you have ideas for things that you think could be replicable in other states or could be of help or use in other states, those are encouraged, but also within states as well. So thinking about collaboration between agencies or between different actors within states that may be involved in DCRA data collection efforts. And if you have any questions about anything that we talked about today, by all means, reach out to myself there at Doug Spence at journ.org or to the project email address there at dicra@journ.org. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. That I think, turn it back over to you, Jimmy.
All right, thank you, Doug, and thank you, Alexa. So I just want to add that while the BJA does not have dedicated funding to implement DCRA, we do hope that many of you can take advantage of these mini grants. While it's recognizing it's not a lot of money, I hope that it can be used for some low-hanging fruit. So stay connected with BJA on all our socials. This presentation will be recorded as noted and posted on BJA's YouTube channel. We also try to keep the DCRA webpage as well as the DCRA TTA Center resources as up to date as possible. So check back often and get back to those resources as much as you can. Next slide, please. So stay in contact with us. If you have any questions, you know how to get a hold of me directly. You can use my email address. You may also have noticed that we started using a shared DCRA at usdoj.gov email address that my colleagues Sam and Brooks, as well as a help desk specialist, have access to. We added this so that we can ensure more consistent and less repeat communication. So hopefully you're not hearing from us on the same topic from multiple people. But for any technical assistance needs, please contact the DCRA TTA Center. So with that, we'll leave it open for any questions. You that are still hanging on, I encourage you to go to the website, look at the data. If you get any questions about state level data, feel free to refer those folks to the website, and hopefully it serves their purposes and saves you a little bit of time. And with that, I think we will give it another 10, 15 seconds. And then we'll close out the session. So thank you very much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for all your efforts on DCRA reporting, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.